Aloha! Thank you for joining us today for this special online event on the topic of sex trafficking. Did you know that there is a great demand for teen girls in the world of sex trafficking? It alarms me that victims are now often middle school and high school girls in our very own communities, not just girls and women from other countries. I have learned that Christian girls and youth groups can also be targeted by recruiters. I'm so grateful you are joining us for this impactful interview I had with expert Shantae Williams of Established Hawaii. Shantae has a long history of working with victims here in Hawaii, so she speaks from real life experience. Engage your heart and mind as you listen to this interview, jam-packed with great insight and practical wisdom so you can protect those you love and care about. Okay, well, I am so excited to have my dear friend Shantae Williams. She's on the front lines working with sex trafficking victims, survivors, all the time. And so she really has a lot of experience and expertise to add to this conversation. So Shantae, can you just share, a few facts, maybe some stats that may surprise the general public? Because I think still there's a lot of people in the public arena, parents included, that don't really realize that sex trafficking could actually happen to their own daughter or niece or neighbor, but it's just something that's far away, or maybe foreign women. People still have those kind of thoughts. So can you share any maybe stats and maybe just in general what's happening even on the school campuses and in communities?
Yeah. So as far as stats, it's really hard because we don't have hard stats that we track in Hawaii. We're just starting. So the organization I work full-time for, Susanna Wesley Community Center, and they serve all the kids in the state. And then we also serve adults in Oahu that most people don't. So I think we may have the breadth of the numbers at least, but we just happily started tracking. So that's going to be data. And then there was a data done by a group from Arizona University, but it was research done. But there were some limitations. So I just say that as a caveat to, like, if you're trying to look for hard numbers, it's really hard to come by what is accurate. And then, for example, like the Arizona study said, just for buyers, looking at the purchasers, because I felt like that was one of the studies that kind of tapped into what we're seeing too. And it said that 1 in 11 men, local men, are purchasers of victims. And when you look at that study, though, if you pay attention to the wording, it's talking only about the local numbers, people who had a 808 area code. What we know from doing the work is that the majority, the top buyers, are going to be military, who usually do not change their number because they move from place to place. So they keep their normal phone number. And then also tourists, who's not going to have the normal number. So that number kind of explodes when you look at, like, if it's 1 in 11 men, how many is the number actually when you're looking at the buyers as a whole? And then who's supplying that? Because if there's this large of a demand, there has to be a supply. Yes. Now, there's definitely, we do a lot of work in massage parlors. There's definitely a lot. Massage parlors are not just, or the brothels, they're not just the international immigrant client. They're definitely there. But they also have local girls in there, people who are local to Hawaii. And we also, because with our work with the kids, we see that the majority of the clients that we serve are children. Like, that's just the fact. They're local children. None of them, well, 1 or 2 here and there. We have very few that are from internationally based, and then also from the mainland. So what happens is, because Hawaii, it does attract the tourists who have a lot of money, and it does attract the military guys. The prices are a lot higher that a victim is told to charge by the trafficker. And so there is this pull for the traffickers to come because they can make a lot of money here. And when they get here, they're not just looking for who they already have working for them, but they like to see the exotic, or so they're going to want under their stable, which is the people they control. They want various different races. And so they're approaching different schools and areas where they know that they can find a good set of different races and cultures. And so that being said, we work very closely with the DOE. One of my part-time work that I do is going into the schools, because one of the strongest tools we have is prevention. And we work really closely. The program that I wrote is DOE approved. So we're able to go in and we're able to freely teach what prevention to the kids in a way that is very conversational for them. They get engaged. And from there, the DOE was able to show us, because there's only like 2 groups that really target the schools, which schools had the higher numbers. But what I found was interesting was, maybe there was a handful that I'm not remembering, but I don't remember seeing any of the schools that weren't touched. We were just looking at which had the highest rates. So I think that that's important in realizing that you can't expect that any school. And when I say that, in our own work, myself and my partner, my business partner, Vern, we also will target the Christian schools and the private schools. And I think that people need to know that we haven't touched not one. There's not a school that I can think of that we have not had a victim come out of. And I think when we talk about like what trafficking, the definition really is, it's kind of easier to understand why the numbers are a little harder than people expect.
Yes, and I heard also that here in Hawaii anyway, that there's a lot of people have some Hawaiian ancestry in them, and the girls with some Hawaiian ancestry are pretty high as far as local victims here in Hawaii. And so yeah, there's a local issue, and I would say across the nation in cities, everywhere it's traffickers are there.
Right, right.
Trying to get the kids.
Yes.
Yeah,
very much so. I think, it's easy money for them, the way that they see it. And as long as people are willing to pay, they're going to supply it because it's there. And it's a lot easier to trick the younger, the easier, or they're going to look for somebody who maybe is going through a hard time. Maybe it could be even a divorce or coming from an abusive relationship. They're just looking for people that they consider vulnerable.
Wow. Yeah, that is so true. And then you mentioned earlier these organizations that come in, like the mafia people or the gang people. It's like they're into drugs, perhaps, but then this is a money making thing too, right?
Right. It's definitely money making. It's a very typically even in Hawaii, right? Like we're talking. My experience is primarily local. Very, I grew up out here in Hawaii on Oahu. And so we see the statistic is here too, or the quota, as they call it, what a victim has to earn per night. Each victim is $1,000, but that's standard across the United States, that victims have to earn $1,000 and 100% they turn it over to their trafficker. So if they have one or two, $1,000 a day, even if they just have one victim, that's $30,000 a month. So it's very lucrative for them.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That's so eye-opening. Now, can you just define, just very simply, what is sex trafficking?
So sex trafficking, easiest way for me to describe it is, so there's 2 ways. For the adult, you have to be able to prove that somebody is using force, fraud, or coercion. So somebody is physically abusing them and making them do it, trick them, like saying, oh, this is a modeling agency, and then forcing them to do pornography or something like that. And then coercion, which is the most common type, is that they're acting as though they love them. It's a girlfriend, boyfriend, or those types of things. And they're using that relationship to force the person to do it. With the kids, it could be that, but it doesn't have to be. As long as a child is exchanging sexual activity. So that can be sex, pornography, stripping for something of value. So that's money, drugs, a place to sleep, protection. Then that relationship is going to fall under sex trafficking, even though there may not be a trafficker per se. And so there may not be a third person, but like, let's say a kid has run away and they're out there by themselves, they don't have food or anything, and an older or a person comes up and says, hey, you can stay with me, but you're going to have sex with me. That is sexual exploitation. So commercial sexual exploitation, which we often abbreviate as CSEC, falls into that category and also falls under sex trafficking. And recently there is a bill that passed in Hawaii that does consider it, recognizes it as sex trafficking, and the person that is having them trade can be charged.
Wow. That's well, we need to make progress too, right, in our
Yes.
laws. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes. Wow, that's good. Information. Can you share what are some ways? I know that it could be a long list, but just say that maybe just give some, so share some ways of the many ways, that girls can be manipulated or coerced. Because I think some people might have their own concept of how that happens, but it can happen
Mm-hmm.
through friendships or just,
Yeah, a
friends
lot of
or,
the,
share
I
that.
think the top two are boyfriend or a relationship, right? Boyfriend, girlfriend, and they're going to really win the trust of this individual. A lot of times their family too. And that's love, especially when it's new love, fresh love, especially if it's the first serious relationship that a child has had,
Mhm.
then they're gonna not want to lose that. And so as soon as they see that they've got it, and they have their own books that these traffickers put out, they read, they have trainings. I like to read them to learn what we're up against. And they really teach each other how to manipulate a person and how to get somebody to fall in love with you. So when
Wow.
at the peak of this is when they tell them, now when she starts to behave like this and do this is when you start switching things because you have them now. And
Oh,
so the kid doesn't see it coming, right? And it's really difficult for you to break that bond at that point because it's a lot invested there. Another way is that somebody will befriend them, and they're going to look for kids that are kind of like loners that don't have many friends, or they can sense a vulnerability. You know how sometimes you say like a person who is an abuser, they can see when somebody else is vulnerable to being abused. Doing this work enough, I can see people come up to me sometimes and they'll say I'm a survivor, and I say I know, I can see it. And
wow.
so I know that these perpetrators can see it, right? And so what they're going to look for in that with the friends, they're going to tell somebody under their control, I want you to approach this one. I want you, because they can see the vulnerability. And so the person will befriend them and they become really close, and that's their best friend. And then it even gets to the point where they might think like, I don't want to leave my friend. And so they may say, I don't want to do this, but the friend is saying, I don't want to leave. And so the child will put themselves in a dangerous situation. Like, let's say they went to a party and things are going bad, and they say, I need to get out of here. But their friend says, no, I want to stay. And the friend is always in the know, but the target doesn't know this. And so what happens is that they begin to do things like they might spike the drink, or they might just peer pressure them into staying. And after a certain point, it's not safe for them to say, I want to go, or they don't feel like they can go, or they physically cannot leave. And so we see it very different, but those are the primary two ways that we're seeing. And then social media is huge, where it's a very easy way for traffickers and recruiters to learn a lot about an individual, a lot about a child. They post everything, right? I had the worst day, my parents this, my sister this, and they'll listen, they'll remember, and that means a lot to a kid. Somebody being there for them, listening, remembering, and then they'll feel like they know and trust this person, and then they'll lure them out.
Wow. So I know that this can happen, like you said, more easily to those who are loners, who are low self-esteem, are needy. And we can take a look at like the kids in foster care and just, those
Mm-hmm.
kids that are more at risk, for sure. But
Mm-hmm.
can this touch even all socioeconomic backgrounds?
Yeah.
Because, you can have a wealthy family, middle class family, still have a daughter that is insecure. I mean,
Yes.
even from two parent families, sometimes it's their own issue where they're insecure,
Right.
a loner or socially, have difficulties. So can this span the different socioeconomic backgrounds?
Yeah, it spans everything first and foremost. It can be for two-parent household to the single parent. What we have to also realize, like they target middle school because that is the most socially awkward a child is. Their body's growing. They like I will assess the most beautiful girls and they have the lowest self-esteem. They'll like want to cover parts of their face because they think their nose is big, or my feet are too big. It's something that probably somebody jealous mentioned and it has stuck with them for whatever reason. And in Hawaii, the two-parent household is often not seen or not as big a threat for the traffickers, because our cost of living is so high that those two-parent households are usually outside of the home for long periods trying to work and earn a living. And
Right.
so there's a lot of open space for them to try to lure in these kids after school, before school, after school, anytime that they know that this child is going to be alone. And most parents don't get home until well to 6 or 7 o'clock at night because of the traffic, having to pick up food or different things.
Yes. Yes. And so I want to just make a note here that middle school, again, is really, middle school, high school, but middle, as young as middle school. But also, I want to just point out that as two parent families, you might not even know that your child is trapped because your child comes home every night, is home, maybe goes to school, because
Mm-hmm.
the sex happens, right, Shantae?
Yeah.
Maybe before school, at
Yes.
lunch or after school. So can you just share a little bit about that? Because as a parent, you could literally not know that your
Right.
child is trapped.
When we look at like our identification of the kids that we serve, and remember our agency serves all the kids that are suspected and confirmed in the state, because there's a federal mandate that if you suspect or you know that a child is trafficked, you have to call them into the hotline for DHS, and then we're the contracted agencies, so they'll funnel them through. And it's very easy for us to identify those kids who are runaways or who have problem behaviors. But there's this other group that's harder for us, but they're there because we work with them, and we usually get them from, we'll find one, and then a child can usually tell you 3 of their friends who are involved in this. And then that's how we'll branch out. But that there's no indicators that the parent outright can see. Once they know, they will tell us, oh my gosh, it happened around this time, because they noticed a difference. But it's like they because they go to school, they work in the morning, and the kid will go to school a little bit earlier. The trafficker will have that child work before school because the businessmen are heading to work and may stop off and get services. And then the kid goes to school. Sometimes we definitely have where if they're organized enough and they have what they call like a sneaker pimp or a popcorn, it's a younger pimp who is 15 or 16 and he's in training under a real trafficker. If they have a lot of that presence at the school, they will have them do like lunch breaks or bathroom breaks and service these guys in their cars on campus, and then you also have this big gap after school. So that's when the businessmen aren't expected home yet, right? Everybody's commuting. And so this window, by the time the businessmen, the real people who are going to be paying for this, have to be home to their families, the victims get to be home to their families. So there's not this gap where you can say that this child is really missing, right? Before school, after school, nobody's expecting them to really just be, they're just going to expected to hang out at school or eat school lunch or whatever and do whatever they're supposed to do before the parents get home. But we're seeing that a lot of that time that happens. And then the weekends, it's a lot easier. Can I spend a night at my friend's house or things like that? But we have some that they don't even do. They do weekends very, here and there, but it's before and after school and during.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, there's all the time with extracurricular activities and things going on, multiple kids that you have to take care of as parents. It's easy to overlook, right?
Right.
And also, like, what about I have a lot of friends or my network of people is like, I know a lot of pastors
Mm-hmm.
and church leaders. And I found that even as I started talking to some churches, I would say it seemed like 99% of the pastors, church leaders had no clue when I first explained this to them that this was happening,
Mm-hmm.
locally. They still had that, caught in their mind that it's a foreign thing. However, there were a few pastors who said, yes, I understand, because like a senior pastor's daughter was sex trafficked.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a family grew up in the church. I mean, you think,
Mm-hmm.
or even church leader, again, strong presence, strong faith-based, family. And it can even happen to Christians, to churches, right? Because I know
Right.
some sex traffickers at times will target youth groups or so right, can you teach a little
Absolutely.
bit about that?
Yeah. So the two things came to mind when you were saying that is the first, we had an outreach team it was somebody who's working for Susanna Wesley, but also a part of like Blue Water Mission Church, who does like a lot of the homes and different things. But they had, at this time, we had piloted this outreach, so that we were doing street outreach. And so there was a male and a female. So the male was really good at like not only just working with the victims, but also the traffickers. At first, they did not appreciate his presence. And then they said, he's a church guy, right? And so as they got to know him, the pimps became very open and comfortable around him. And they shared to him that like, oh man, we love your church kids. And he said, wait, why? And they said, he realized, it's because they're naive, right? And he said, well, why? Because they're naive. And then he said, well, that, and the fact that if you get them to mess up, they're so afraid of being condemned or being looked at differently that they won't tell. So even if you,
yeah,
yes, they're shamed. They're so afraid of being shamed that they just won't tell. So even if you victimize them and it's not their fault, if you get them to think that it's their, like, you shouldn't have wore that or you shouldn't have been there, we got them, because they're going to be too scared for everybody to find out. So it's definitely, and then the other story is, I remember, I mean, we've had several recruiters throughout the years that target youth group, but I remember one of the very, very strongest recruiters we ever had, because she just looked so innocent, and she would tell us, like, who's gonna think it's me? And she was just very open with what she was doing. One of our workers went to church one day and called me completely freaked out because she was in the youth group and she was clearly targeting kids. And so I said, just let her see you. She'll leave, and then when she saw her, she left. But unfortunately, a couple of weeks later, she had went to a youth group camp and recruited a kid right out of there. So, and when you ask her, she says, well, I'm looking for the church kids because there's a more likelihood that that kid may be a virgin and I can get more money for them. She's just very open about it.
Wow. Wow. So we really need to open our eyes and ears to what's going on. Do you have any other, just one or two other stories of just the coercion and the process of how a high schooler, middle schooler can get tricked, deceived, coerced, manipulated, in ways that maybe you wouldn't even think of that's how it could happen?
I think that the friendship is going to be, and the relationship is going to be kind of key. And especially if it's somebody who they like, when you look at statistically speaking, people, women, or individuals who are sexually assaulted in our culture, I think the stats are like 1 in 3, right? Or 1 in 5. That is a lot. And resiliency factors into different things that make it so that some people can have that and be able to bounce back, but others, they're going to struggle naturally to get over that. And so if this individual is sharing this, and a lot of times a trafficker and a recruiter will share their vulnerability first, that they were abused, because even in the traffickers, there's like an 85%, there was a research that they did on a pool of traffickers, and they found a large percent of them had been sexually abused themselves. And so they will share that. And you see that with like the R. Kelly and Epstein, like when you listen to the documentaries, they tell. And to a victim, especially coming from a male who says, I've been through this, it shows a vulnerability and there's truth to it, that it really hooks them in. And we also see that with the girls. It's like somebody who says, like, I went through this, like I was hurt, and they say, me too. And so they grow this strong bond. And so that bond is used to keep them. And even we have had instances where that girl that she's sharing it with hasn't been abused, but now I've confided in you, and they feel like, there's people who are natural nurturers from young, or really want to be there and are compassionate. And so they will really bond with this and consider themselves this person's secret holder and different things. And so they will use like, oh, I'm having a traumatic day, I need you to come and help me, and different things. Or I was struggling and I drank and I shouldn't have, and I don't want anything to happen to me. Come out. Can you come and just sit with me? Don't tell anybody because I don't want to get in trouble. So they're not going to tell their parents when they're what they're going to do, and then they're going to go and try to help their friend and end up in a bad situation. So a lot of times we see that a person's own trauma can be used to try to lure others in.
Wow, that I can see how that could happen. It's just that heart connection that wow,
Yeah.
someone understands me and is empathetic towards me, and it's automatically there's that bond, right? And I could see how it
Yes.
work. And I just want to say too that the sex abuse, like you were saying, there is a high correlation, right, between having been molested, inappropriately touched, sexually abused, and getting sex trafficked. You just have that vulnerability already. And I just want to mention that just in the things that I've done with explicit movement, finding out that the sexual abuse it's not only adult to child, it could be an older child to a younger child, or a same peer. I know of a pastor who was sexually inappropriately touched by a guy friend at a youth camp, and it fully traumatized him, horrible, but it was a secret for years because he didn't tell anybody.
Right.
So I just want to, my heart goes out to people and to young people who have had that trauma at some level, and maybe nobody knows yet, but somehow that makes them more vulnerable. So we really need to have those dialogue, have those conversations with our young people, and have that heart connection as mentors, as parents, right? Be able to help them heal.
Right. Have that avenue to where they are comfortable in telling. The earlier that they can tell, the better, with looking at just, treatment wise, because they're not doing different things to try to cover that up, and they can get help. But you have to make it to where that there's an avenue, there's that lane. And even if they've made a mistake, because a lot of times perpetrators are looking for the mistake per se, like, oh, you weren't supposed to be here anyway, like you weren't supposed to be at your friend's house, or maybe you said you were going to one friend's house and went to another, or you thought this was your boyfriend, and you said, oh, I'm going to be at my friend's house, and you went to see your boyfriend, and then he raped you, and then now you don't want to tell because you weren't supposed to be there. So just kind of giving them that leeway of amnesty of, if you ever get hurt, I don't care about the circumstances, I need to know about the hurt, will go a long way with some of the kids.
Wow, that's so awesome. I want to just it kind of relates to one of my later questions, but I want to ask this because as we're putting together Brave and Beautiful publication, and it has amazing articles, like magazine like articles for girls to read on different topics. And towards the end, we talk about topics of confidence, right? And emotional health. How do you deal with emotions in a healthy way? Vision for your life. But towards the end, we do talk about a couple articles on what is sexual abuse, and even pornography, and that the link with that, to sex trafficking, how pornography can feed it. And girls nowadays, they can be easily addicted to pornography nowadays as well, right? And be able or watch it from time to time. So what I love about Brave and Beautiful, what I'm hoping, and I believe this is going to happen, is as moms, let's say, go through it with their daughters, or mentors go through it with their, the young people, or even in small groups, one-on-one, this can actually build that relationship where it's a springboard to have conversations about these topics. Because sometimes it can be awkward to say, okay, daughter or son, I want to talk with you about sexual abuse right now.
Right.
It's awkward, right?
Right.
But if you're reading something together and you say, hey, what did you think about that? And all of a sudden it opens a doorway to great dialogue between parent and child, or mentor, and young person or young people, right? So keep talking about that, because what you think about Brave and Beautiful, and how it can help.
Yeah, I know that when working with trafficked victims and kids that are high risk, and I need you to know that like when we do our high risk factors or vulnerable factors, one of them is being a child between the ages of 12 and 17. Like, so at a certain point, everybody, or needing love and attention, everybody needs that, right? So when you're looking at and you're working with the population, two things I find help to keep kids out. That's educating, awareness, right? Prevention is education and awareness. If you learn, if you know what to expect, like if I see these things, that means this person is trying to harm me. That is going to help prevent them. And then the other thing is relationship, because in a relationship, you have somebody who you know cares, somebody you can talk to, and that person is going to probably know about that person. And they may try to push them away, but if you don't go, or if there's not, if it's, they don't have that space in their heart for this older person because they're healthy, they're healed there. So with Bold and Beautiful, like I think that Brave and Beautiful, sorry, I think that the key to this is that it takes away that awkwardness for anybody, because a lot of parents, that generation didn't grow up talking about this, and they don't know how to do it. And if you do it wrong, your child will be mortified, but it's not like, it's not irreplaceable. It's just like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. But the more you normalize it and the more you're going to become okay with it, the more they will. And the easiest way is to have a tool like the book that they can read, and they can just tell them, like, this, set some expectations, like, we want to talk about this, and I want to talk to you about this, but I don't know, it's kind of awkward for me, so I feel like this is such a good opening where we can have a conversation about it, and then they will be able to do it on their own and then come together, and it's going to bring healing to both sides, and most importantly, it's going to teach them the things that are going to help them build confidence. And it's even opening up their conversation to where you don't know, like if a kid, like how I was saying earlier, when they're young and they're covering up their nose, moms, they think they don't notice that they have moms or something like that. And then mom can say, I was like that too. And this is how I did. And it's so healing.
Yes. Yes. Build that empathy and understanding from generation, to generation. Right. And I love that because Brave and Beautiful does have articles on ways that recruiters traffic and groom and manipulate. And so it will bring that awareness, but you can talk about it, and it can be I tell people it can be a transformational process for both sides, because you're hitting things that even as adults we struggle with, right? I need to grow in emotional health as well, or my confidence or whatever. So it's building up both sides, but it's really bringing that communication, which, as you know, is so important to keep that connection with your child, especially during teen years, even though it's hard at times, right?
Right.
So,
and I think that it'll go a little bit further, where if mom and daughter are doing Brave and Beautiful and they're processing and mom is learning, she's going to talk to dad about these things. And that relationship with dad, if dad can come back and say, I love your mom's nose, I married her nose, like it will break through where they're like, oh yeah, there are people who like the way that I look, and or mom can show her pictures where I used to look just like you, and different things. But I think it can even extend more to the family, because whoever's processing the book with the child can now help, like, even the adult understand, or she might say, like, I don't feel connected to dad, and then now mom can take it and they can work on that. So I think it really can help the family unit too as a whole.
I really believe that too. Now, we spend a lot of time in Brave and Beautiful on confidence, emotional health, and vision for your life, have goals. How does that help a girl to be less vulnerable?
Well, I think it was best said by one of the pimps, who was just talking about how he gets girls. And he actually was a famous rapper, and he was doing an interview with these guys, but it veered because he mentioned that he pimped and the guys were so fascinating and they thought it was the coolest thing, right? So they said, how do you get a woman a girl to sell herself for you and give you the money? And he said, oh, you can't get every woman. He was just very matter of fact. He's like, no, you can't get it. And they said, what do you mean? And he's like, oh, if they have morals, if they're like, oh, I want to do this with my life. So if they have goals, if they have plans, he's like, just back off. Like, don't waste your time. You got to go like and find somebody else. So if you can instill like that confidence, that emotional healing, it is a deterrent. They're not going to waste their time. Within the first couple of minutes, they're going to know to move on.
Wow. So the piece of Brave and Beautiful that covers those things to build the girl up is a great way also to have them be strong and stand in their own power, in their choices, and yeah, just be less vulnerable. So
right.
I love that. That's so important. We all need that, to be built up.
Right.
Now, once a girl is trafficked, just kind of change the subject a little. Once a girl is trafficked, there is a recovery process that involves a lot of healing because it was a traumas
yes.
that have happened to them, right?
Right.
And so, in a nutshell, I know it's a loaded question. There's so much healing and many different avenues of healing, but in a nutshell, what does the recovery process look like? Just in a snapshot.
It's really hard. I mean, I think the therapy wise, it's average of 5 years of intensive therapy.
Wow.
And that doesn't include, because they usually will drop out because it's hard, right? So that in of itself, just to kind of have a good baseline. But our organization will work with them from the minute identified, right? So even if they may deny it, but we may work for them there, or we will go to the streets. Like, so law enforcement, the police will call and say, I have a victim here, or we're going to go do a raid, come. So from that moment, we're going to work with them. And the process goes from denial, usually, like I've never, to truth telling, or at least some. And then there's this guilt and shame. And a lot of times they may revert back. Like, it's not a linear, it's not an easy thing, because cognitively, I think that they are trying to rationalize why they do it. It's kind of like some cognitive dissonance, right? Like, oh, well, it wasn't that bad. Like, it doesn't affect me because I was abused a long time ago. I learned to numb, so the sex doesn't affect me. And so we have to work with them on like, but yeah, you have to sleep with a nightlight. Remember, you have those nightmares, you have that's your body telling you. So it's a lot of education along the way of on mental health. And then you couple that with when they're recovering, a lot of times they have the clothes on their back. Like, they come out without anything because they have to turn their back on this. If they're at the family home, not so bad, but there is, even within the family, a lot of turmoil because the parents, they're vacillating from sadness to anger, and we have a parent prevention, psychoeducation group because of that, because a very good, well-meaning parent may say something very nasty out of just like hurt or guilt or shame or whatever, that's not helping the process. So it's a lot of moving pieces to get them to healing, to self-forgiveness, to believing and trusting in people again, to seeing the world as they should, and that it's not this horrible, dangerous place. So it's a very, very long process. And a lot of times, in order for them to be to the point where these traffickers are not chaining them up, right? Physically, mentally, they are. There's chains on their minds, there's chains on their hearts, right? So in order for them to get there, they inundate them in different things. They have what they call seasoning, which is a breaking in process, where they teach them how to walk different, talk different, think different. And their language is like choosing up. Or so if you choose up, that means you chose to work with me. Their language is always telling them, this is your fault, this is your choice. Wow. If there's an argument, why don't you leave? I'm not keeping you here. You want to be here, and so, wow. And every time and every time they run back, it's like you see, you want to be here, but they don't know. Trauma reenacts itself. Like, there's a lot of explanations for it, but the child doesn't understand that. The victim doesn't understand that. So it really kind of wears on them. And then like I was talking about before, because if I know who's a victim, these other ones do too. And so you may have a victim who's doing well in their healing, and then here comes another child. And that's why whenever there's victims, you've got to be very careful of who you let come around them, because the way that they work, the way that the pimp works, they will pull each other back out. They'll, like that's just the recruitment process. They get paid more, they get treated better. And if this kid A isn't ready to get out, but kid B is really trying, she's going to sabotage. So there's just a lot of different moving parts throughout, and it's a very long process. We've worked with kids that I met them at 14, 15, they're in their 20s and they're still healing. Some of them are healed, some of them aren't. Everybody's path is different, but typically I would say at a minimum, like truly 5 years.
Wow, wow. So it is a long road, and
Yeah.
just of continuing to pursue. So how much more, prevention is also helpful in the, you're rescuing and healing, but also preventing as much as you can from this happening, right? It's just really
Right.
both sides for sure.
I think that that's key, right? Because we don't want to, you don't want to, like with doctors, they don't want to have to do that surgery. They don't want to have to give that medication. You want to get it before it happens. Like I would love that if there was no need for the type of work that we're doing now, that it was only just preventing before, because that way, if you don't catch it now, they've gone through so much hurt and so much trauma by the time you're able
Right.
to catch it, if you're catching it at the tail end.
Right. Wow, that's so important, and that's why my heart is to my heart breaks, from all of these
Mhm.
stories and what's going on, and with the young people. As a mom, or as a parent, as an adult, you just care for these young people, vulnerability, and yeah, to be able to provide this Brave and Beautiful, and also Leaders Guide to help them with the mentors and parents. I just feel like it can really help build that community,
Right.
the awareness, and do this together, that
Yes. Yeah.
we bring it together, and even raise, I think, even, we need to raise the next generation of young people that care about this issue as well, right?
Exactly.
It's not going to
Hmm.
go overnight,
Right.
obviously. So to raise up the awareness and the justice, part of it, in people's hearts, to have that care about this issue is important to me as well, to
Right.
have girls care about what's happening, and understand what's happening.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah. Can you mention a little bit about boys being trafficked? Because I know that's something we're going to work on next year, is Brave and Bold for
Mm.
boys, to help, well, they need help and confidence as well, and, emotional health, as well as, goals for their life, but also just being able to tackle the pornography issue, which is huge among the boys
Mm.
already. Hopefully, preventing them from being perpetrators also. But
Right. Right.
boys can be vulnerable too, because I think in Hawaii was 20 something percent of victims are boys, males, and globally, it's up there.
Yeah.
I heard one time 40%. I'm not sure how accurate that is, but
Right. They did a New York
demand
study
for
that
boys.
said, yeah, they said that they think it's 50, if not more, that they think that if you factor in the males and then like the trans female to male to female, but biologically born male, the number surpasses females. And the reason why the identification isn't up there is because they're ashamed to come forward. We had a recent influx of male victims.
Oh,
Um, and it's good in the sense that, yeah, finally, they're being identified and we can help. But it's bad because it's like, how, you don't want any kid to be hurt, number one. And how many more are out there? Because the influx, it was 11 referrals from one perpetrator, right? And so how many other countless others are out there? And I think with like when you're looking at like Brave and Beautiful, people are more apt to say, yeah, I need this, like it's easier to understand that, oh, a girl has been victimized or needs to be built up. But if you are raised in society where you can't get hurt, it's not okay for you to get hurt, it's not okay for you to cry as a male, it's not okay for you to be traumatized or to be vulnerable, it's really hard for them to come out and speak. So if they have a tool that not only talks about like, you're not alone, and these are the things that are happening, but helps them to build up their emotional health and their confidence, it'll be powerful. Some of the most powerful speakers out there are men who have broken through and say, hey, I've been victimized and I'm okay. You know, like, it was hard. This is whatever, but it is what it is. And you don't see that often, but it happens. And so I think the more that an individual knows that they can relate, that they're not alone in this, the stronger that they're going to be. And then it's going to decrease re-victimization, which is extremely high in the trafficking population. Like, kids get re-victimized all the time because they feel like, oh, I'm damaged goods. Nobody, you know, understands me, and different things like that. So, and especially if you can get kids talking in a safe space with the males, you may find out that you have more than one, and they can bond by that too.
Yes, that's so true, and that's the whole purpose of it as well. We want to self-study is great too, but if you can have dialogue, you know, with a mentor, a dad, and a son for Brave and Bold, or you know, small groups, is so much more powerful, because it adds so much value to the process, you know, of absorbing and really internalizing and applying what you learn, right? And yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be really helpful, because I could see where in the male population, there's so much shame about even more so than girls, you know, but it needs to happen.
Yeah.
And it's often a topic avoided in churches. You know, just in general, it's awkward, and people don't know how to talk about it in a way, but we really do need to talk about it, because we want to see people healed and restored.
Exactly.
Right?
Or you're just going to have them, they're going to be there. The abuse is going to have taken place, and you're going to have people who are vulnerable to a lot of other things. And that's when you see like the rebellion, or just sneakiness even too, you know, like on one hand, it could be naivety, but on the other hand, a person may become extremely secretive and sneaky. And then they're going to start dealing with just different things that, like, I do assessments all the time. And some of the kids say, like, it'll be in their file that the kid is gay, or, you know, LGBTQ. And then during the assessment, they say, do you think that I am? And I can't answer that, you know, but it's because they've had abuse that they're so confused at it. So having a book like Brave and Beautiful, Brave and Bold will allow them to work through these things and of themselves, and they can become their authentic self, versus something, you know, that it's confusing for them because there's nobody to talk to about what's happening.
Yes. I mean, the youth pastor that was inappropriately touched at a youth camp when he was in college, it caused him to think, you know, am I gay? You know, just because it stirs up a lot of stuff, right? It naturally will. And so being able to talk about it and work it out is so important, you know. And yeah, I just love what you shared about, we just need to really support, you know, support us all, you know, in this process. Wow. Thank you so much, Shantae. This is so good stuff, you know, and being able to be, we want to see people strong and healthy and healed and safe, help to safeguard, you know, as much as possible. Right. And male or female, you know, so I really, really appreciate you. So I think that's it. You have any other final comments about anything before we close?
You had asked me before, like, what makes you keep doing this type of work? Because that's a very common question.
I would want to know
that people ask, like, how can you know, in all this darkness or whatever. And of course, seeing the healing is like none other, right? Knowing a person that you've picked up off of the streets and then seeing them thriving is just amazing. But when I really sit and I think about what it is, when I used to do more crisis, like on the street, and we had like a very active at the time police department, the morals department was going out and getting victims like 3-4 times a week. And so it was just like I was constantly on the streets picking them up. And I knew of their sites. There's websites where you can go to purchase victims. And so when the victims had told me this, because I said, how did you meet this person? You know, were you on the street? Oh, no, I was on this site. So I started looking at the sites. And then after a while, I started praying. I would pick somebody and I would just pray, bring her to me, God, bring. And then I would pull up 2 o'clock in the morning and it's her. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And of course, you know, it makes you work 10 times over because God has said, you know, you asked, I delivered, now you do your part, you know? And
Yes.
so he wouldn't answer those prayers if he didn't want to see change and want to see restoration. And so that in of itself. And so now sometimes I'll do it with the runaway kids, you know, bring her, or bring him, you know, just different things. And he's always so faithful. And it's really powerful for the victims when they say, I don't know why I'm so comfortable with you. I tell you, and I said, oh, because, you know, I knew about you from way before. And I've been praying for you for a month or a year, like I'll, you know, however long, because sometimes it wasn't like a week, you know. And they say, I never thought, I've been doing this all my life, I never thought I'd stop. And sometimes they had supernatural experiences that caused them to get in contact. But it was really powerful for them when I would tell, like if they asked, you know, what makes you do, or why do you care about me so much? And I cared about you before I knew you. I just saw your picture. And they said, what? And I would explain. And it was just really powerful for them to know that God just honored that, like pointed them out to put them on somebody's heart to pray for them, and then helped to deliver it. So
what you're saying, which is confirming, it's God cares about this issue.
Yeah.
And there's hope.
Yes.
There's hope rising, you know, and that it's, yes, it is a dark area, but you can see the hand of God at work. And through your prayers, Shantae, that is amazing.
Yeah. And he would do it different ways. Sometimes it would be a bust. Sometimes a girl say, I don't know what it was, I just jumped out and I ran and I just screamed in the streets and I got help. And I never thought I would see that one, because I could tell she had been through it for a long time, and I could tell that she had fallen. Okay. And I was so shocked. You know, when I saw her and she said, why did you do that? And so I was like, you know, you never underestimate God, because he can do it. And he always does. He's faithful.
Wow. That is such a great note to end on. Just, you know, the positive hope that is at work. God is at work. Yeah. And God is giving ideas, and God is giving strategies and
yes.
prevention and healing, and on both sides. And so thank you so much. Yes. Thank you for what you do. And continue to pray and support you, and just your great work that you're doing and continue to do every day. Shantae, thank you so much.
And thank you, because I know that it's not easy to do the preventive type, to tell people who don't know what's happening, and then to get them to try to make actions. But it's really important, because it's the only way that I know that's really going, that's proven to prevent kids from falling victim.
Yes, thank you so much. And I love what you shared. It's not only the knowledge, but it's the connection that we can have with parents, mentors, that can really help guide us and be our safe place, right? Yes. The young person, be that safe place to guide them and protect them, and just be their heart to heart, and understand and validate what they're going through, and just walk with them. So thank you so much for being
all right. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Wow. Thank you, Shantae, for that jam-packed interview full of insights and wisdom in your work with victims, some of whom may have very well been in my neighborhood. This is hitting close to home. If you are like me, you may be feeling alarmed and even disturbed at such knowledge of what is going on in our local communities. We just don't typically see it. If you're like me, I was thinking about the many teen girls in my family, among my friends, in my church, and beyond. What can I do to help protect them? My mama bear heart rises up in me. How can you and I protect the teen girls we care about? Stay tuned because coming up soon in this next session, we will share more about a powerful solution, Brave and Beautiful, that Shantae and I talked about. Shantae and I believe Brave and Beautiful will help save and protect lives, a transformational tool you can help put into the hands of teen girls in your life and empower them with confidence. We believe this tool will bring awareness and prevention to stopping this travesty from damaging more lives. See you next time for our last session. Don't miss it.